Good evening. It is Saturday today. I've been busy. Now, before I show you it, let me do a bit of rearranging of my desk here. Hang on. For this is important. And I've just realised I didn't go and get a drink first, so my stupidity knows no bounds. Oh well, we'll worry about that later. Right. You may recall, on Monday, I tried to explain joining and how joining could be awkward. And we came up with a few plans and decided that some of them were less likely to be successful than others. Now, I set about earlier today trying to see how one of the ideas would go. And you may recall, I set about trying to explain an idea of you had the bumps going down each side, and that you would kind of zigzag from side to side. Because if it was both sides, then it would be really bulky. But it was going to be a bit bulky anyway, because everywhere you've got 2 threads, you'd now have 4. And then you're adding a 5th one to bind them together. So, hence the zigzag might, being the opposite word, might be better. Now, I managed to screw up one of the turns. But to be honest, I find it difficult because close up, it looks pretty good. And in fact, let me change this for a second so I can put this down and sort this out from a different point of view. Hang on. So, I'm going to show you as zoomed in as I can, while not holding it, what I did. So here you can see, and I believe it shows fairly well, the join down the middle. But it doesn't look hugely crap. It's not invisible. It is in pattern, shall we call it, as the knitters would say. The pattern, the pattern continues. It's not perfect. Yeah, it wasn't as hard as I thought. It wasn't as easy as it could have been. If the joining as you go technique had worked, that would have been the easiest. But whatevs, right? However, it kind of works. You know, it has holes you can see through down the middle, but it does have that kind of emboldened effect for the column. Now, I can reduce, obviously, the thread that I did the same with down to a thinner one. By the way, it is quite a strong one. So if I zoom out to normal, right? If I do this, it's quite strong. It retains the same amount of give. So from that point of view, it is a very practical result. It does show though. I mean, hopefully you can see that it is showing. So it's not invisible. Now the question is it actually worse than having 2 flat edges joined together? It's certainly going to be more difficult to do a join over a long piece. For this thing still weighs next to nothing. It is really, really light. And as a result of being really, really light, it's like holding two bits of smoke in your hands and trying to, kind of cajole them together while sewing, right? Because there's no weight to it. And of course, you can't pin it together because, well, there's nothing to pin. However, it is a contender. I mean, in person, and I think on camera from the angle that you've got, it does show that it is pretty visible. But it's also not... It doesn't look like a fuck up, which was where the Join As You Go one seemed to be going. And I do think with a thinner thread, now if I did a thinner thread, it might be worth trying a there and back again, so you go through the zigzags of both sides, so that it is more securely held down, because the thin thread will be, well, thin. Sorry, I was just looking at one of the errors that caught my eye. You know how it is. There it is, look, there it is. It was waving at me with intent. So, I don't know. I'm kind of pleased. I will say that doing that distance took me about 40 minutes. And that included one bad start and typing at somebody while I did it. So, it's not hideous. It could be better. So yeah, So, you will not be too surprised then when I pull this away. And we have strip, right? Now, I'm not going to do a horrendous amount of strip tonight. But I just had some thread failure. I don't actually think it was a knot. I think I must have put a pin through it. And it snapped. So, I do feel a little bit yawdy. I do feel a little bit like kind of I want to do a bit more. But this also didn't take that long. This spider is terrible. I don't like my choices for this. Once again, I tried a variant on a theme. I like the square outside. I don't like what I did in the middle. This time round, I did repeated half stitches, which is a 4-strand plait all the way across. But I think I made some of them a bit long, so they're a bit scaggy. I mean, if I zoom in, hang on. As you can see, it looks a little bit odd. I mean, it is partly because it's an angle. But there is something going on kind of down here in the corner. I mean, it's not bad. It's just... it's just not great either. I don't like how the legs have splayed. I don't like the fact that the top two look strong and equal. The bottom two look more parallel, if you know what I mean. So, Rory's sleeping and twitching behind me. So I don't know. But I have started another strip because, well, it's a strip, right? So I'm now going to do a bit of shenanigans off stream. Hang on. Where I So let me put this away. Swap it out for so let's see. Let's see where we're at. Excuse me. Hello. I'm doing okay. I do need to do something though. you say that. Hang on a sec. Let me just do a quick change. Where I go in here and I go... yeah, that'll do that. Right. I was just showing people, but of course no one was here, so, you know, fairly excusable. I'm going to show you. Now, you may recall I'd been making some strips. And on Monday, of the beginning of the week, I tried to explain... I still need to turn this up. Oh, this is no good. Hang on. Well, me too. I've started another script, and to give you an idea, it took me 2.5 days, I think, to work down towards the point of getting these in. Now, obviously, I could just put the pins in and move on, but, you know, wasn't doing that with the strip. The strip I kind of made like this triangle here equivalent, because obviously I'm working across, and this would be, you know, the side, and you know, I would have got down to kind of this level. Do not make me get it down again, but I've basically done all of kind of that much today, and it took me about 1.5 hours. What the fuck? And that included tying all the bobbins together, just like I did with this one. So, I don't know. It's just one of those things. Anyway, on Monday, I kind of got very frustrated and upset because I couldn't explain what I wanted to explain. And people weren't telling me when stuff was off screen. And that was just kind of the final straw, really. If I'm trying to show you something and you can't see what I'm doing, are you even paying attention, kind of thing? And it was just one thing too much for me, so I gave up. But today, I woke up and decided that I would have a go at joining my 2 strips. And I did. Now, it was a bit like holding smoke in my hands, because I need to tell you, these strips weigh nothing. I mean, literal nothing. I mean, even 2 of them joined together, nothing. Alright? I mean, if I put this on you, I mean, I've got really sensitive skin. I can tell when a fly walks on me, right? I seriously, I can tell when a fly lands on me. If you put this on my skin, I'm not sure I could tell. And this is... well... now, there are a big bunch of options. This is AN option. Now, I don't hate it. This is a good start. I found it reasonably practical to do, which, let's truly be honest, is a bonus. Because we all know that the perfect answer will be near impossible to achieve. I'm not sure. I'm still a little on the fence. Now, it shows up better on this camera than I think in the picture that I did. That there is this bold strip down the middle where the 2 lumps from either side have come together and are overlapped, and then, so, you know, instead of butting them together like this, I've overlapped them like that, and then I've wound a thread round it in a zigzag manner to hold it together. Now, it is good and strong. Watch. Tug, tug, tug. Tug, tug, tug. It is... It fits in very well. So... pretty good. Hang on, let me turn this on my TV down, because for some reason it doesn't help that they've got a screaming patient. And so someone screaming in my ear is putting me off. Actually, let me pause that shit. That'd be an even better option. That's better. No screaming. The lack of screaming was getting to me. Right. So, I did make a mistake on the way down. There's one bit where it didn't look like I went under quite the right bit. But it didn't take forever, which is a bonus. It was really difficult to hold the two pieces, because obviously you're trying to hold, this and another piece over it, so that these little tiny little dotty holes, overlap, and then fanny around with a needle and thread. So from that point of view, it was a bit like trying to hold smoke and sew it together, because there is no weight. To be honest, I think if I wet them, it might help. I seriously mean that. It might help. It might also make it near impossible, but it might help. Because at least then but then of course they'd just stick to me, and that would probably make it worse. But the principle of joining is, I do like at least the fact that you can see, if I zoom in again, because I've already done all this bit, but hang on, if I zoom in again, you can see through the holes. So it's not like joining the squares together. Because obviously if I join the squares together, there is a hard line. Now the hard line is not necessarily wrong, but I kind of was aiming for invisible looking join. So now I will also say I sewed, so obviously most of these lines that you see going like this, these are all two threads kind of twisting slowly together. Where it overlaps, there's obviously 4 threads and then a 5th one spiralling around them in a kind of zigzaggy manner, going up and down through the holes made in the mesh, by the way, so hence it is kind of secure, right? So with that in mind, if I used an even thinner thread, God rest my soul, it would be slightly less thick. It's weird, because sometimes I look at it and think it doesn't really show, and then there are other times I look at it and it stands out a lot. And of course, most of that is because it is 4 threads for the bubble down the middle, with occasionally 5. Now, in theory, if I start at, say, the top and get to the bottom, mainly because these little frilly bits got on my tits. But let's say, for sake of the argument, I start at one end, get to the other. This is exactly that, so it zigzags. It does, but obviously the fact that it's still bold, it still shows, right? But I don't think the zigzag portion of it shows particularly. Now, if I chose a ridiculously thin thread, and I am talking ridiculously thin, it might make more sense to go up one zigzag and down the other, so that now you're making figure of 8s doing this as they go through. And at least then it would be even, and both sides would be held together. Because, well, in effect, every other, if you think of them as O shapes, every other O shape is not held down one side. So there is potential flappage and movement. Whereas obviously if I went up one, down the other, I would tie down both sides. But then I am definitely adding a 5th thread to both sides, even if it is ridiculously thin. Because of course, being ridiculously thin, it won't take as much movement because it will be thinner and weaker. So this was fairly practical, fairly easy on the thread quantity. I expected it to take a lot longer. I expected it to take longer. I expected it to use more thread because obviously the winding around and the zigzagging. But it really wasn't too bad. Because in essence, you sew down through the holes in the middle. So obviously you're making an S shape like this kind of thing down the middle. So you start on, say, the top right, and you go down and through, and then down and through. Well, you'd have come from the other direction, so you go down and through. Then you come down and through the middle, down and through for the edge. Change direction, down and through the middle, down and through, down and through, down and through. So you make a zigzag, and it kind of winds round, so there are no laying on top threads. So it looks the same on one side as it does on the other. There is no blatant discerning difference. It's not like on one side you've got the thread showing, the others you haven't. Well, as much. For they wrap around those threads equally ish, give or take a bit. I was quite pleased that it didn't take a horrendous amount of time, because obviously, if you think of how long lace making takes, if it takes too long to join, is it really going to, do you really want to commit to yourself though? No, this is purely for the strips. For the squares have straight lines, so you just over sew in a straight line. This is purely a strip deal. Hence, I've started another strip. I already hate the first spider that I made, so this one at the top here, the experimental spiders. Yeah, I don't like the choices I made this time. This time, a bit like this one here, I did this kind of thing, but what I did was, instead of just twisting them, I did a 4-strand plait, because obviously there's 2 pairs going in at each of these, so I did a 4-strand plait through to the other side. I don't like it. It's not hideous, I just don't like it. It was really awkward doing the 4-strand plait, because you had to kind of do cross twist, snug, cross twist, snug, cross twist, snug. So it took a lot longer than I was pleased with. The twist was a lot easier to work with. And it doesn't really look that different unless you're real close. So, didn't really gain on that one. I still like the square outside. The square outsides to them I definitely like. Now, of course, I haven't decided what goes in my strips other than I'm a snake. That will live in my head forevermore. The snake bits I like. Having dots down the middle I kind of like. But I've obviously got to pick. I don't want it to be too busy. And I think potentially if you think of it as a metre long thing with 6 strips or 7, 8 strips, whatever, right? Too much of this, I think, would be a bit much. So, do you do patterned plain, patterned plain? Do you cut out, say, I don't know, these little ones and just leave, and then maybe even shrink these? Or do you do some form of alternation, so you have big, 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 small, 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 so that they kind of work in a pair, a bit more squarish. But then, of course, you want it to be the same on the 2 sides, because, well, I don't have OCD, but even I kind of want it to be the same on the sides, so it needs to be an odd number. But one of the downsides of joining like this is that it is no longer square. for you have overlapped in the middle. So it is no longer a square. She says not getting the edges very well joined there. It is not a square. Now you would expect it to be by not a lot, but it is not a square. Now it might be slightly longer than a square. I didn't actually check. Hang on. So here is a square, so we can compare them now in a bit more. This is the other problem with lace stuff. It catches on fucking everything, which is part of the reason the sewing was a shit. So, the square is slightly wider, but slightly shorter. Hopefully you can vaguely see that. So, there's the bottom of the thing poking out. It's nearly an inch wider somehow, even though it's the same number of bobbins. And I swear I used the same, and I used the same number of, and I used the same gap of pins. In fact, if anything, I thought I'd made them slightly further apart. Apparently not. And even though they look further apart, so if I put them next to each other, these look further apart than these. But it's definitely the same number of bobbins. But this has a lot more weight to it. It's not heavy, but this has a lot more weight to it than this. This is still like holding smoke in my hands. As I was saying earlier, I've got really sensitive skin. If a fly lands on me, I know, right? And if you put this on me, I could feel it. I mean, if I put it on my hand, I can feel it on my hand. Not that it's heavy, as I said, because, well, it's lace, it's made of nothing, but I can feel that, well, it's got weight, it droops quite a lot. Whereas if I put this in kind of the same pose, it can stand up for itself because it's just not got the weight to weigh it down. And it's not because it's stiff, because, you know, very clearly not stiff. But it is very, very thin. Much more neck curtainy, I feel. This is much more privacy. This is more neck curtainy, right? Now, it's not because of the different stitches. I mean, in part it is. But it's the same ground stitch. But you look at this, you know, if you look, I look on my screen, and admittedly I'm looking at a 2-inch screen, remember. But I can see that this is far more white than any of the ground on this. Now, I did use a hair thinner thread. And when I mean hair thinner, it does like 3 more wraps per inch than the other. So it really is almost noticeably not different. But, so I would definitely have to recalculate a little on the simple grounds that if these 3 are accurate, that I need 3 of these, well, that means I need 6 strips, but not if I'm going to end up 6 inches short at the end, because then I need 8 strips. So, that could be awkward. No, it wouldn't be 8 strips out. It'd be half an inch per thing. So it'd be about 2 and a bit inches, which is, funnily enough, nearly a strip. That could be convenient. In terms of pattern, that is convenient. But I am really pleased myself that I have got a test one done. It's not as invisible as I'd like, as I said. It's not kind of... I mean, to be honest, I didn't expect to crack it first time round. But it's not hideous. Really isn't hideous. I mean, is it perfect? No. But it's not hideous. There are other choices. Now, one choice that I considered She says, where is that? Don't really want to use that. Where's that rolled off to? Is that it? Yeah, that's it. Hang on. So, one option, she says, looking around, what happened? Oh, there it is. That'll do. Right, bear with me a moment. Brain cells kind of have... So, I have got some leftover thread from earlier. Now, one option, if I do it on another spot, because I know I'll be able to pull it out afterwards. I won't be able to do this on camera, so you'll just have to, like, you know, talk amongst yourselves for a minute, because I need to take my glasses off and shove it under the end of my nose. And all the blind people will remember why I do this, right? So I need this underneath here. I will master to you what I'm doing. I'm going to... Now, it's not going to actually be holding anything together. But I'm going to pull that up. And then try and go in and pull this up again. Problem is this crochet hook has got a hook the size of a gnat's what's-it on it, and it's just not really designed for actual crochet in my mind. So bear with me as I try and do this and not make it look like a dog's dinner, but at the same time actually kind of do what I'm thinking, which is not hard, but it is when the hook doesn't hook, if you know what I mean, because it's, well, just too small to actually do the job properly. I need a bit more tension on it than that. So I'm not going very far, but I do want to do enough that you can kind of see the point. Now, as I said, everything catches on everything, and you'd be surprised how much it can catch as well. You seriously have no idea how much thread can catch on nothing when you're doing something like this, because it is highly infuriating. Because you go to do something and it's like it's super glued itself to the edge or something, even though there's no rough edges or anything like that, because, well, there ain't, it's, you know. But it will act like you've kind of super glued the edge to everything, and as I said, because this crochet hook doesn't really loop catch things, it makes it harder as well. So you can only kind of guide the thread with it. Don't worry, I'm nearly done. I can't be bothered to do much more than this, so that's the point. I wonder if that finished today. But I suppose I should have asked. There was an upgrade going on at work, and I suppose I should have asked the guy doing it if it worked. Or not. Right, bored now. Okay, so this was one option I thought of, and I will have to zoom in incredibly closely on it You can probably already see roughly where it is, but let me zoom in. Now, I can't zoom in any more than that, particularly. But what I've done is a crochet chain in the holes. It's fairly simple to do, and if I used a hook that wasn't, you know, a nano dick in, I mean, seriously, look at the lack of hook on that. I mean, it is absolutely tiny. I know it's slightly bent, that's deliberate, but it's still too small, frankly. I need a bigger one than that. But that would be easier to join, but it does really, really show. And of course, one of the other problems is, as I will be able to demonstrate, watch this, you can pull the end and it will just all pull away. So if you don't, obviously you'd tie it, you'd pull it through at the end, but should the thread break, it could fall apart in milliseconds, right? So that's kind of why I didn't do something more like that when I was doing it. But as I say, you can see where it joins, but you can also see that it is the little holes overlapping. So the pattern continues, it just has a thick bit. So I'm not against it, I'm just not pro either, if you know what I mean. But it's not square anymore. But then obviously when making strips, well, it wouldn't really be square anyway, so it does make it very easy to fold because it likes folding along the join. I'm going to put that in my squares, to be honest. Okay. Take that off again. So yeah, I have started the another strip so that we can do more testings. I was about to say testes there. But some more testings. But my thread broke, and well, gluing it. Well, I've glued it back together because, well, I ain't undoing like all of that chunk. That's okay. I mean, I'm not a teaching channel, but at the same time, I'm documenting my journey, and in documenting my journey, I've got to explain what I found, the problems I had, right? Because when I look back on it, I may not remember it all. For I'm not writing a journal, because, dear God, I'm not doing a journal on it. But, so these are, in effect, my journal. I just invite you to watch and make comments. But it is nice to have people to talk to about it. So, for example, dear Naughty Celt, who is the nicest dude alive, has helped me improve my knots of joining, so that a lot of the frustration I used to have with trying to join them is now not a problem. Well, that is a huge world of a difference for me. So, with that in mind then, you know, I wouldn't have found Naughty Celt if I wasn't doing this. So, you know, there are going to be smart souls. Of course there's going to be smart souls. It's the internet. But at the same time, you know, hopefully the ratio of arse to normal people, or nice people, is a good ratio. And because, you know, hopefully too many of the arseholes won't actually even bother watching it. So it is nice to have people to talk to when doing it. I know that, for example, Floos and V, who often comes during my weekly ones, they do some knitting while I do this. And it is almost like meeting up with a bunch of friends and doing some crafting. We're just not all in the same location, the same time zone, and you know, and it means that we can craft together, and we don't have to do the same craft. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Do different crafts, but it's like crafting with your friends, and I really like that aspect of it. I mean, I'm not a social kind of person, But I do really like the fact that it makes me not feel quite so on my own doing it. I mean, I kind of am, but I'm not at the same time. And having other people that drop by, especially regular people who drop by, is really nice because I look forward to speaking to them. And, you know, like today, while I did some of my test off stream, 1, 2, 3, 4, I've got something to show you. It's like, hey, Mum, it's almost like, Mum, look what I did, right? It's got a bit of that to it. And it's nice because people who are here, for the most part, are here by choice. So they almost... But it's also a case of, because people have chosen to be there, you know that if you go, look what I did. And even though, potentially, to maybe the most experienced person in whatever craft you're doing, it is the most trivial, dull thing in the history of the world, because they learnt that 60 years ago, and oh my god. However, people who don't do your craft, people who are there just because... I mean, I love watching crafts that I don't do, because I have a logical brain. I can see kind of how it works, and I can guess to a large extent how it works. I mean, we had a guy who came in the other day who's into making leatherworking. Now, although I've never done... And... I think the problem I have with lace making is because although I'm not a lacy girl, right, I think to a large extent the problem I have is I like the logic of it. I like the fact that you go twisty, twisty, crossy, crossy, and then when you take all the pins out, it doesn't fall apart. That this shit stays where you put it, right? And that you can make shapes and letters and, you know, with enough effort, you can make shapes and letters and by doing different stitches or by actually making it in a shape. And some of the things hold and some of them don't. Someone on my YouTube comments asked, basically, if when making it on my little roller pillow, does it mean that the lace is automatically curved? And the answer is no. Because... you don't knot stuff together, because you are not realistically shortening one side. No, it doesn't. And in fact, to make it maintain a curved thing, you'd have to starch the bejesus out of it. And, well, that's that's a fun game for all the family. So, it is... There are aspects of it to it that kind of don't make logical sense, in the sense that you would imagine making it on a roller pillow, it would come out curly. Just like when I take the threads off a bobbin, they're all curly. Well, so surely then it'll be curly. No. Doesn't seem to work that way. Now, I quite like the idea of making strips of lace. And, when I think the short answer is when I get round to doing the strips, there is a really simple thing to do. Instead of making 6, 8, whatever it is, strips, make one bitchingly long, massive strip. I mean, like, meters long. Because obviously... Well, let's say it's 8. Let's say I need 8 or 9 strips. Let's say I need 9 strips. Well, no, I think it's 7 strips. Let's go with 7. Let's say I need 7 strips. So I need 7 meters of my strip to join together to make my neck curtain. Okay. Well, what if I made, say, 8.5? Or 7.5, whatever, good measure. Made some extra. So that I can then join staggered. So instead of having to do big, small, big, small, big, small, and then small, big, small, big, small, big, I could do big, small, the whole way down. and then just offset them. Now, another part of me had thought to making pointy triangle bottoms. Not this kind of pointy triangle bottom, but more a 45-degree angle pointy bottom, i.e. more like this kind of point. So that you start off with 2 pairs, plop. You add a pair on when you get to this side, you add a pair when you get to this side, you add a pair when you get to this side, and you go down the thing till you've got all your bobbins, right? And of course you can do that in a very neat and tidy manner. This would be the bottom of my curtain, because obviously I want to attach something to give it a bit of strength at the top to be gripped hold of. So it would be the bottom, in which case I would have to start each one. But I would make it upside down, which is kind of amusing. So I had thought of that. I had thought of that quite long and hard. I thought of adding some colour to it. Now, it would be subtle. I wouldn't want... I'm not talking adding pillar box red or hot pink into it. I am talking subtle colour. But I think... such as making the snakes slightly coloured. So while they're quite prominent, because I do like the snakes, I could arguably make the strip slightly wider. Getting a bit tight with the bobbins, but, we could do something, make it slightly wider. We would have to calculate, I think. But, to do something to... And this is where my poor little brain cell starts beginning to melt slightly, is because it's now almost got too many choices. Again. I mean, we had this with the squares. For those who were around in the early square streams, you may recall that I spent ages umming and ahhing over whether the first 4 squares I made would be the inner 4 or the outer ring. Because until I'd finished, they could be either. So let's say I made them the inner ring and then done something completely different on the outside. It could still look really good, but it meant that I'd kind of given my brain a chance to not think about those little bits yet and to worry about the other bits later. Well, of course, if I'm making strips, I've kind of got to commit to a large extent. Even if let's say it's got to be 7 strip wide, so I've got to make 2. I can either do odds and evens, I can do strips 1, 2, 3, 4, 3, 2, 1, or, right? And I would have to commit to that kind of from the off. I think one of the advantages of doing strips is that because it would take, as it does, at least seem to take, significantly less time to do a strip. Because volume-wise, it is the same volume as a square. It's just not quite the same shape at the moment. So let's say it is a square's worth, right? That took 2 weeks instead of nearly 4. Well, if that's the case, well then now I can look at doing twice as wide and covering better, bigger window. It says brain. Now, we all know that my brain is basically evil. And it definitely likes to volunteer me for things that it really isn't in any fit state to be handling. So, it's very up for committing to things that it's just never going to be good in. It's not got the marbles to finish that. And this is part of my reasoning for wanting the join not to be too much. Because obviously if the join is too complicated and going to take forever, I'm never going to join them, am I? I will end up making them and I'll have joined like a quarter of one and my brain will have gone, wow, I never knew this was so hard, and one out, right? Now, although that's technically not a huge issue, at the same time, I do kind of want a neck curtain out of it. Sorry, I pushed a pin down a bit far. There we go. I do actually want a net curtain out of it, for it is one of the only things I can think of that I would use that would be made of lace. Now, I think it was Christy said that she reckoned that it was something like 11 weeks and she could do her patio doors. Now, her patio doors are huge. So I've got a pair of patio doors that are wider than my normal window, and obviously full height, so they're the best part of 6 foot something tall. Now obviously the pane in the window is smaller than the door, but it's still, I think, the best part of 6 feet. I haven't actually measured it, for it came with curtain and I have not had to care to measure it, but you know, I would obviously. Now, part of me would love to make some lace covers for them. Not for privacy reasons, believe me, that's not a thing. But because the birds keep flying into it, and if it's got lace behind it, they can see that it's not a through-way traffic, right? Because I am getting a little bit... It does get to my heart, for I am soft at heart, when the bird flies into my window and dies, right? Because then I have to dispose of it before the dogs eat it. Well, I know technically I don't, but I feel slightly compelled, and I don't really want poor little birdie who's already had a tragic death now to be eaten. Because I know that, well, let's just say someone had a squirrel. It wasn't the dogs, but the dogs found the remains of the squirrel, and I had to clear up what was left. This was not one of my better moments. I mean, it took me a while to work out it was a fucking squirrel. It was that bad, right? It was not a pleasurable moment. Now, this is the way of the world. You know, A eats B eats C. Who eats C, you know. After all, I eat burgers. So I eat cows. And chickens. So, you know, I'm not sure they'd be best pleased with me. So, you know, I'm hardly one to cast too many aspersions at it. But I'm also not the one finding half-dead things and then leaving half-dead things in my garden. So I could hear funny noises. I think it's Amy behind me. Yeah, it is. Everyone's asleep. It really makes me laugh. My dogs sleep all day, right? Like good dogs do. But then come the night, they're not tired enough to sleep the whole night through. And it's kind of like, well, so they get up. And occasionally they wake me up. Not because they've woken me up by getting up, but because Amazon Ring alarms have introduced a change where now the internal cameras make a noise when there's movement. They didn't do that even like a month ago. So, of course, if they go downstairs to have a drink of water or something, my phone goes ping, ping, ping. It's like... And depending on how sleepy tired I was, I now wake up. At least I don't wake up thinking there's a mad axe murderer in the house, but, you know, I do wake up, so... I haven't actually looked to see if you can turn it off. Let me have a quick look. I was going looking for something. Oh, so I got distracted by opening my phone and seeing something else. I was going to look for something. What was I going to look for? I was going to look for something. Oh, I know what it was. Amazon Ring thing. Settings. Modes and automation. Modes. Home. Cameras. So, it's set to detect and capture motion in this mode. Well, I kind of want to know if someone's mooching around downstairs. What I don't want is it waking me up. And there's only enable all things, of course. Because this has definitely changed. Because what I want is I want it to detect and capture motion. I just don't want it to tell me. I don't seem to get that option. Or I do, but it has to. But it does have to beep at me. If I turn off the beeps, then I won't know if anything really bad's going off, will I? Let's turn those off then. See, that's supposed to be on the base station, not my phone. My phone is making the noise. Customer the alarm. Push. Interestingly enough, it says, "Oh, it won't send you any notifications when you're in Do Not Disturb." Horseshit. Yes, it does. Gotta love technology. So you come out, you go in. 1, 2, 3, 4. Be next row then. See, how is it that these bobbins keep getting longer? I posted something in the beginner lace group on Facebook today, and the beginner lace book people, someone had posted about how she was making a snake, not my kind of snake, it's a different kind of, an actual snake shaped thing, and she said that she couldn't do any more because her bobbins pissed her off. And I was explaining how bobbins are really weird. You find that there are some features of a bobbin you really like, some features of the bobbin you hate, and that there are, you know, but no one seems to make one that has all the great things and none of the bad things, right? But that it also, of course, does depend on the thread that you're using. And I explained how I've got some. Now, these are not them, obviously, but the heads, the necks of these, the bit where the thread is, this neck is parallel, so it is a straight piece of wood, right? I've got some where they're tapered. But, like I loaded these at the bottom so that because these have no heads, that if you think of, I don't know, either of these bobbins actually. This bobbin's got a friend attached to it, hang on. As if proving a point almost. Right? If you look, these have got what's known as a head or a rose on it. And what you do is you do a quick flick of the thing and you try and loop that over there so that your yarn goes round the head, right? And this means that you can see and it will then dangle, right? These, the ones that I like, have a big groove. And although you probably can't see it too well, it's got a groove in it, and again the thread sits in the groove. And these also have, you know, straight necks. But the ones that the one that I tried, I really liked the shape of the bobbin. I liked everything about it, except for it had a tapered, fat to thin. So the head was here, the bobbin, if you wound it, was at the bottom. But it meant that the thread could just slide up. So like this, where this has gone all loose and faffy, she says trying to show it on a darker front, where it's gone all faffy here, it was doing this, but of course then it was tangling with your half hitch around the top. And it was getting really hard because then you try and pick it out of there and you've got to use a pin and chase it and, you know, it'd be dug under 6 layers of other stuff. And it was really difficult. And I'd never thought of that. And I went, no, nor did I until it did it to me and I hated it. It was, you know, I really hadn't given this a thought because I've seen loads of people using these bobbins, but clearly they don't have that much thread on it and they just kind of either they deal with them in such a way that the thread never moves somehow, because obviously a thread under tension is thread controlled, right? And so somehow they're not, you know, theirs isn't letting them down, whereas mine was. And it just meant that 1, 2, 3, 4. I didn't add one. I've just pulled out the wrong one again. Get back in there. You know, it means that you find yourself going, so I need to lean forward then to find this pin there. You know, until it's happened, it's a bit like when you're buying a house. First house you buy a house because it's got 4 walls and a roof, and it's in a vague location that doesn't annoy you, right? Or you don't have a 16-hour commute to work or whatever, right? It's fairly near where you need to be for whatever reason. You can afford it. There's usually a bunch of factors, but you know, the truth of the matter is it's there, you've got the money, near enough, you know, you'll buy it. When you go to upgrade your house, however, the single thing that most annoys you about your old house is one of the key things the next house must not have. Now, it doesn't matter what that is. So it could be it doesn't have a yard. It could be that it's next to a busy road. It could be that it's next to a railway track. It could be that it's right at the end of the flight path. Hello, I've done that one. You know, all of these kind of things. And the next house you buy, your first thought is, I'm not living near that airport again, right? Or I'm not living near the football stadium. Or I'm not living, you know, right next door to the shops or the pub. Or, you know, because they have karaoke night and, you know, it goes on till 2 a.m. They're all drunk and wee in the garden. Whatever it is, whatever has annoyed you about your house will be something you actively look to not have in your next one. And the same goes for cars. It goes for, if you're buying a new car, what is the one thing, if you're buying it because your car was old and falling apart, well then the first thing you don't want is another old one that's falling apart and only going to last you 6 months, right? The first thing you'll do is look for a newer one, but that you can still afford it. Then you get into the... That doesn't feel right. That's because it's not. 1, 2, 3, 4. I forgot to add some. That's why. Or it'll be that it was a hideous colour and you had to buy it because you needed a car and you hate the colour. Or it's an automatic and you hate automatics. Or it's a petrol guzzler. Or it's electric and, it hasn't got the range. Or it's four-wheel drive and chews through your tyres. Or, right? Now, sometimes these can be plus points. These can be exactly what you're looking for. But on other occasions, these are the reasons why, when you're buying the next one, you don't want one. And it's all a personal thing. For, what one man looks for, another man may hate. And that's fine, we're grown-ups, we can deal with that. But, you find yourself sitting there going, well, so the next one you find, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, is not all the things that the old one was that you hated. Now, it may have a whole new pile of things that you now hate. That's definitely can be a thing. So, I moved away from being under the flight path. And when I mean being under the flight path, I'm talking, lick your finger, go like that in the air, and you're probably scratching the bottom of an airplane under the flight path, right? And it was infuriating because 5 o'clock in the morning, the plane started, you woke up, especially in the summer when you've had to have some windows open because we don't have air conditioning in this country. And, our air conditioning is called open the window and let the mosquitoes and the bugs in. Yes, that is a thing, because my old house also, as if the airplanes was not sufficient, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, was opposite the, quote, drainage works. Well, first of all, if your drains smell like that, honey, you have a problem. Secondly, the mosquitoes also lived there. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And as a result of the mosquitoes, I mean, don't get me wrong, they don't eat me. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. But they eat everybody else. But it also, so in the summer especially, holy pong did it pong. You'd open the car door, having driven home from work or whatever. Open the car door and pretty much retch. Because it was just arse. Or it was liquid arse. That's all you could smell. Was poo. Absolute rotting, festering poo. And, of course, the day we'd gone to look at the houses, and, of course, subsequently look at the houses, it hadn't smelt. So, of course, we didn't know. And when we'd asked what was behind there, we were told it was a park. Now, nowadays, this is illegal. They can't lie to you about what's there. But also, should have looked on a fucking map. And, of course, when we moved to here, well, moved up to Gloucestershire, we didn't look at a map either. Yeah, I didn't think of that either, did we? So even though we'd lived opposite, basically Twickenham Rugby Ground for a while, no, I do mean like opposite. You could see it from my front door. We are near another popular thing in Gloucestershire. Now, here, where I live now, is not so bad. But it's still bad enough. As an example, was it Tour de France? Might even have been Tour de France. But there was some cycle shit a few months ago where they closed the entire road through the village, the only way in and out, because some little cyclists were going to be playing on it. Well, I don't want them on it. I want to be able to go and get a pint of milk if I need it. I don't want to have to, stay in for 3 hours because some lycra-clad loonies are cycling up and down the road. Can't they go round and round a track for that crap? Or at least pick a road that... Anyway, that's the point. Oh no. They're building some cycle paths, not far from here. I mean, it's far enough, thankfully, but not far from here. And it's just dawned on me, that's going to make it worse, isn't it? Anyway, they're spending like 10 million on these cycle paths, and everyone's up in arms because, well, we all know the cyclists aren't going to use it because there aren't that many cyclists. I need to be right back and get a fresh load of drink because my clock on the wall says that it's 11:23. The clock on the computer says it's 00:23. Thanks, clock. You're an arse. And it's got a solid blue light on it. It's an Amazon clock. And they tell you, that means it's paired with the thing, but it's supposed to go out after 3 seconds. That blue light's been on for, 3 days now? So I don't know what the blue light's telling me. It's not that it's out of batteries, because that's a flashing orange one. And I think it is the blue lost contact with, and then it rejoined, but it just constantly... But it also doesn't do the timer thing, which was the whole reason I got the clock, was because it's got like LED timer things. So if you say set a timer for 15 minutes, it does like a countdown timer on it, which is really quite useful. Because then you can see how long's left on the time, and it does multiple timers as well, so it's really quite cool, except for the moment it's sitting there with a blue light up its butt and it's an hour out and it won't sync. So let me be right back and I will post Right, that's enough of that rubbish, because, well, to that. Hang on. It's moved on my window round. Hang on. Well, it's always fun to try, but one of the biggest problems I have is that I'm dyslexic. And basically, I've really struggled to see anything that other than the order that it currently is. And when I'm trying to unravel them, it always moves them in the middle. And then I have to start again. And as I'm getting to the middle, it moves them again. And so, unless I see it kind of straight from the off, I'm done, you know? It's very rare that I come up with much, just because I try and it doesn't work out. So, it looks like we've got ads in a bit, so sorry about that. Should have thrown ads up when I wandered off. But thank you for trying. There's a dog in the way. I think also one of the biggest problems with that game is the fact that it blocks you out if you've successfully put in a word. But if they're in... Now, that makes sense, but I don't know whether it blocks you out for wrong choices. I think it only does it for successful ones. But it also means that if there's only, say, two of us typing in words, well... Like that last one, it wanted 65 points, but we came nowhere near it, because even though we had a bunch of words, we can only type in one word a round. Well, one word a quarter of the round. Well, it doesn't go very far, you know? Well, I guess if you had like 20 people, it's more than plenty. If you had, if you've got a fair number of people watching and they're all joining in and they're all awake and they're not lurking and, they're not maybe doing their own crafty thing and able to just put shit down at a moment's notice, it probably is enough time. What I don't like is, it doesn't tell you the country of origin dictionary. So, for example, as we all know, we Brits tend to spell our words with vowels and S's instead of Z's. Well, so for example, centre is not spelt the same as the Americans spell it. So we have RE at the end and they have ER. Now, I do happen to know it does accept both. But there are definitely some British spellings that it doesn't take. What also annoys me is when you have definitely spelt a word right, and it doesn't accept it. Now, I've played a few word guessing games on my phone occasionally. And normally, if you guess a word that isn't there, it at least gives you a bonus point for it. Because, well, you guessed words that it hadn't listed. But this one just ignores you like, you grew ahead. And I find that frustrating because, some of the words that you've said would have been worth, decent points or whatever. And it's not that you've misspelt them. It's a case of, oh, well, those aren't the ones that it picked. Now, I guess that it is a guessing game, but also, of course, it doesn't tell you what words were right at the end. So you don't know what even the big word was. At least tell us what the big word was if we don't get it, right? So that maybe we can guess for next time. I do find it quite frustrating, just because, I can't spell, and, I know what word I want, but I can't spell it, and chances are it's probably the wrong word if I can't spell it, but how will I ever know? Because, well, I can't spell it. Or worse, it tells me it's not it ignores me. I don't know if it's ignoring me because it's ignoring me. I don't know if it's ignoring me because I've spelt it wrong. I don't know if it's ignoring me just because that's not the word it picked. It's just not, it's just ignoring me. So it is kind of frustrating that it doesn't put the words into a queue and then at least go tick and fill it in, or cross it, kind of orange that it was a right word but not for this game, or a wrong word entirely, and you can't really learn from it. And normally the point of guessing word games is that you learn, so it helps with your spelling, or it helps you some of it is to help you think quickly, right? Some of the point of it is to, in a short period of time, do certain things. Now, if it was mathematical, I'd probably be a lot better off. This doesn't feel right. It's because it's not. Can this table stop leaning? One thing I am very sensitive to when making lace is the fact that my table is not straight. And I can't see the pins. I am very sensitive to that, as well as the fact that the bobbins unravel and get on my nerves, because they love to do that. But what also happens is you do this, for example, you shorten the bobbins so that they are level, that they are, good and strong, and then you get to the other side, for example. It's usually on the other way. It's usually when it's going the other way, but, can happen either way. So you get to the other side like that. You go to the other side like this. And that one's getting ridiculously long. Hang on. The problem is if I stop in the middle, I get confused as to where I'd got to. So now I have to go back and undo this, do this one up, because it's getting too long. And when they're too long, it's, it's dangling off the pillow, it's running away. You can't kind of flick the bobbins together and do their thing. They do have to be roughly the right, same kind of length so that all the bobbins are together. It doesn't have to be perfect. It'd be ideal, but it doesn't have to be perfect. But, they've got to be fairly similar. So you do this. You grab a pin, you put your pin in, and you do this, and one will be like down here and the other one's like up there, and you're like, I literally only just sorted that out, and it puts a lot of grief into doing this. This one's too short, so make it a bit longer, and in 2 minutes time it'll be like 5 foot long and running out the door. So we've really been doing 90 minutes already. I obviously spent far too long talking about the drawings. Oh well. Go away, fly thing. The only frustrating thing is that this ring length really does attract them. See, these are getting long again. How are they getting longer? They should be getting shorter because they go backwards and forwards. They should get shorter, not longer. But they always seem to get longer. Some bobbins get longer, some bobbins won't get longer. This one doesn't want to move at all. Yet somehow it got longer. How does it do that? Clean my glasses for the like 900th time today. Hang on. some reason these bobbins aren't sitting in the sticks as well this time. Don't know what it is. So I mean, look, this one's now so much more longer than the other one because it's sneakily coming undone when you're not looking. Bad bobbin. Pin there. One there. So. The only thing I don't like about these bobbin holders is that they do have a habit of not letting you scoop the elastic under. They've got a flat edge, so you can't scoop them as easily under bobbins unless you've got a slightly softer one, whereas this is quite hard. And secondly, you can't, because they're not tapered in, you also can't slide the elastic under the end. This is the other advantage of doing the strips over these, is that you don't end up pushing the bobbins behind. You kind of stick them on the ends in a pile, and because you work in, well, a straight line rather than a kind of a fan shape, and well, they don't get tangled on the pins quite as much. I mean, it doesn't stop them, but nothing like as much. So it's not you, it's you. Okay. We'll start with you. Pin, you're in the way. Go live somewhere. Actually, let's do it differently. Let's take you, pile you up like that. Grab you. So. Bit of a sore eye at the moment. I've obviously managed to scratch. If you think of your eye, you've got kind of like the outside skin bit near the tear duct that's right in the corner of your eye. I've basically managed to scratch that bit of skin, and obviously it's kind of where the sleep in your eye and any crusty bits and goopy bits all go to live. Which is probably why I scratched it, getting out some sleepy gloopy bit. But of course it also means that it's sore. So of course my eye's doing the, well, I will produce more gloopy nasty bits. And kind of catch-22. So then I'm more likely to stick my finger in it to try and cheer it up, you know. See, we saw you. You just came undone then. We saw you do it. Live on global television. You cheated. warm. How can I be getting warm? It's 1 o'clock in the morning. Where's my phone? Yeah, you grow out of it. It's a good boy. No barking! Rory! Don't want them barking out in the garden. Don't want them annoying the neighbours. See, according to the thermometer, it's only 19.5 degrees in here. And I say only, but my body's telling me it's way warmer than that. And I've got a fairly good internal thermometer, to be honest. Usually, anyway. I was expecting it to say considerably more than that, but there we go. Well, it's a bit of an earlier finish than I was going to do, but now seems as good a time as any. Dogs are asleep. I'm yawning. So I do apologise, my friends. But as you can see, we've done some more today. Not as much as I'd have liked, admittedly. It's really weird if you consider that during the week, like I did the first 2 chunks, and then I did like that and that and that, and then no, I didn't. And then I did that, and then I kind of did the rest of that. No, I've done 3 days, so I did that and that. Then I did that and that, and then like the other day I did all of that and that, and then today I've done 2 little cloths, 3 cloth strips, and this tiny section of ground. It is funny how some days it takes forever, but whatever. So let's cover this up for security. I will be back at my normalish time tomorrow, so that's about 12 and a bit hours from now. Yeah, about 12 and a bit hours, so kind of maybe 13 hours or so from now, somewhere around about there. And I hope that you can join me. If you can't, due to time zones or other commitments, I totally understand. But it was nice to see you. Thank you very much for joining me on my journey. I do appreciate you all coming. I really, really do. It makes staying up this late kind of worth it for me. And it is, and I think sometimes, that is sometimes something we lose. I think sometimes we lose track of that, right? Sometimes we lose track that even if all you've done, as you say, is 1 stitch, it's 1 less stitch to do the next time round. And it may not be the greatest progress, but it's still progress. And even if you have to undo a bit and redo a bit, you've improved it. As long as you have improved and got further on your journey, then it isn't time wasted and it isn't time lost. But sometimes you look at it and kind of go, well, this has been 2.5 hours and all I've done is that, really? But as I said, we did talk through a lot about my joins, and so I guess that's taken a bit of the time. But never mind, I shall see you tomorrow, hopefully, or again later. If you haven't noticed, if you do, shut up dog, stop growling, ! Discord when I'm online, and it will tell you where my Discord server is, which is better at notifying you that I've gone live. And obviously you can catch the past replays on... Stop grumbling! Wretched dog. You're a moody little cow. Yes, you are. Past videos are available on YouTube if you need to catch up because you missed some, or you feel that you're missing out. You're probably not. Take care, everybody. Sleep well. Bye-bye.